Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be going over a topic I get asked about a ton, and this, as you guys can see, is our sort of guide that I just made on my wife's whiteboard. That's why it's in pink, because I don't have whiteboard markers and she's a chick. But anyway, what we're going to do, guys, is break down what the best gun for you is for home defense, self-defense, etc. Obviously, we're taking concealed carry out of this and mainly focused on somewhere where you are able to have a gun without having to conceal it. So, all right, so we have pistol caliber carbine here, rifle, and shotgun. So we'll define those here real quick. We have a few training aids for you. This right here is the Glock 19X. This will serve as our pistol example. We have the Surefire X300 on there. Then we have the pistol caliber carbine. We have the Ruger PC9. Another one that I would definitely recommend for this is the CZ Scorpion. Very reliable guns, those two for sure. And there's tons of others, guys. I have plenty of videos on those. And then we're going to go for a rifle. This one here, my home defense AR-15. In the category, though, we're going to include basically anything that is 5.56 chambered, 5.45, 7.62 by 3.9, or 300 Blackout, sort of in that category, and you'll see why here in just a minute. And then also we have our example shotgun right here. This is a Mossberg 590. Excellent shotgun for sure, and definitely one I would recommend as well. All right, so those are our examples, our training aids. We will get to those more here in just a second. I basically broke everything down in terms of points, the lowest being best, and a few different categories that I thought were important, and I definitely think people should consider if they're looking at them. Now, I didn't weigh any of these. That's important because we're going to get into preference and skill set here in just a second. And as you'll see, hopefully, if I can explain it well enough, some of these things will be weighed for different shooters, okay? So first off, let's talk about reliability. Basically, in my opinion, if you buy a high quality pistol or carbine like an AR-15, an AK-47, etc., and it's a reputable brand of good quality using good ammo, which you definitely should be using for any sort of defensive scenario, our pistol and our rifle are functionally the most reliable, and that means in operational use. Our shotgun comes in a little bit behind those. The reason I say that is if you're running a pump shotgun, which most folks are in this category, to be able to actually rack the slide with the effort that you need to reliably shuck those shells in and out of the action does take some practice. And I've seen a ton of people fail under minimal stress, just like a shot timer, fail to run the action reliably. Never mind, under the actual threat of real home defense or self-defense types of scenarios. So I think that the shotgun is, in actuality, a little bit less reliable. I understand that mechanically it may be just as reliable or even more reliable, but in reality it may be a little less reliable. Pistol caliber carbine I put down below it. The reason for that, guys, is the two I just talked about here, the Ruger PC carbine and the CZ Scorpion, they are very reliable. I'd put them right up there with the #1 rankings. However, there's so many variants out there, and many of them, if you guys, for instance, take a look at the Army, they recently did a pistol caliber carbine type of test, and the results were pretty abysmal. Take a look at that study, just Google it, it should pop right up, and you'll see that really only a few did reasonably well, and I think only one met the actual standards that they put out, which weren't that difficult. So I put them a little bit below in reliability. However, if you have one that you've tested and you believe is reliable, then it's fine. I don't have an issue with that. Capacity, that means the ability to, of course, hold and feed ammunition. I'm assuming we're in a non-ban state here. If you're in a ban state, then the numbers certainly would be different depending on your state. Some states will have 15 rounds, some 10, some 7, etc. So it varies there. However, in a free state, which is, of course, still in air quotes, capacity as your rifle is generally speaking going to give you the most capacity. A standard capacity carbine magazine generally going to be 30 to 40 rounds, going up to even reliable drum magazines that go up to 60 rounds, in the case of an AR-15 with the Magpul D60, and AKs, if you're talking about top-loading drums, those things are 75 rounds. They are reliable. So your rifle definitely wins in terms of capacity at that point. Pistol caliber carbine and pistol, again, we're going to give them a tie. The reason I say that is, again, just for these two examples right here, they both literally take the exact same magazine. Standard capacity that they, generally speaking, will ship with is somewhere between the 15 to 19 round range. There are plenty of examples. Those two, for a good example, will accept 33 round to 30 round magazines. So capacity is good for both of those. It's definitely not something I would look at as a detriment. Shotgun, of course, is going to be the lowest in capacity. However, there are some caveats for that, right? So if you're talking about, say, like a number 1 or number 4 buckshot, every time you're launching rounds downrange, you're launching multiple projectiles. Now you may be limited with something like this to 9 rounds in this particular case. However, each round is sending 9 to 20 projectiles downrange depending on the ammo you're using. So I suppose that's sort of relative. Ease of getting hits. All right, now we need to define this. I said before there's going to be some weighing that needs to go on. When I'm looking at ease of getting hits, what I'm talking about is for somebody who's not a super proficient shooter. It's hard to define that with a set standard. One thing I would say is probably if you shoot less than 3 times a year, probably, you're definitely not as proficient as you could be otherwise, we'll say that. And even if you're proficient during those 3 range trips per year, let's say, during those tasks, you're probably not incorporating things that are going to test you under stress. I'm sure there's a ton of you out there, veterans, who are saying, I was in the 101st Airborne Division, and we only shot twice a year. Etc. That's true. Our military is woefully undertrained, in my opinion, the large majority of them. So I am a veteran too, for those of you guys that don't know. So I've been there, done that, seen it. So the ease of getting hits, again, is going to depend on proficiency, right? It goes up. The handgun here, as you guys can see, number 4. It is the hardest to get hits with. Put a target out, take a new shooter, put a target out 25 yards, give them all 4 of these platforms, see what they can hit with in like a 5-second interval, for example, and you will see this is exactly what will come out. I've done it a bunch of times here on the channel. You guys can see those videos of me doing that. It's absolutely true. The number 1 easiest, not so much to shoot well, but the easiest to get hits with for untrained shooters is the pistol caliber carbine. The reason I say that is it's not inherently more accurate than the rifle. It's not. In fact, it's inherently less accurate. However, untrained shooters get really scared with blast. Blast, concussion, sound, etc. Tends to make them not get back on target as quickly as they could. And the pistol caliber carbines have less of that than the rifles, shotguns, or pistols. So for that reason alone, and the reason that you actually have more points of contact. So with a pistol, of course, you have your hands. Hopefully, ideally, you have 2 points of contact there with your hands. With the carbine, you have your hand here and here, shoulder, cheek, and basically you're just naturally pointing like you've been doing since you were 2 years old. And at room clearing or self-defense type distances, it's very, very difficult to miss with a long gun. It definitely happens, but it happens way more with pistols. So you can see we have the PCC here. Up next is going to be the carbine. Again, we're assuming something that's not, I'm not talking a 308, I'm not talking like a 7.62 by 5.4R big bore battle rifle. I'm talking, again, the calibers that we defined here in the beginning. Very easy to get hits with, very easy to get quick follow-up hits with as well. Shotgun here, again, you have a nice long thing to point with, which is good. Gives you good natural aiming points. While some people think that you can just point a shotgun at somebody 5 yards away and you're going to hit them no matter what you do still have to aim it. And again, I have videos on that. I have tons of videos on patterning shotguns. I have at least 10 on the channel, so check it out. If you guys don't believe me, you guys can see the evidence for yourself there. And then of course, last up, pistol. We already talked about that. Ease of operation. What do I mean by that? I mean loading, firing, removing safeties or taking off safeties, whatever you want to say. I said that wrong. Disengaging safeties, and clearing malfunctions. So all of those things into one is what I define as ease of operation. Again, because the operation is pretty darn similar, PCCs and rifles are going to be about the easiest in my opinion. So just for example, again on this Ruger pistol caliber carbine, it's a very simple process to actually load it. We're going to assume that you have at least the magazine or the feeding system in. I know some of you guys out there will not be comfortable with one in the chamber. If that's the case with this particular carbine, you're just going to do that. Anybody can do that. There's no strength required to do it, and you're just going to push the safety button off. At this point, you can engage at will. The same, of course, is true with your carbine. You get into the battle rifles, things start to get a little bit harder to manipulate, so keep that in mind. Shotgun here, again, it's just a little bit more intimidating. For example, I'm 6 feet tall, for those of you guys that don't know that. I'm relatively healthy. I can run a shotgun pretty confidently. I have a lot of rounds through them. However, if I was to give this to my wife, who's 5'3" and like 120 pounds, it's not gonna happen. It just isn't. You need to forcefully rack that stuff, feed it in every time, and then be able to disengage your safety as well. There's just more force required, and it's more room for error in my opinion. Pistols, for sure. Again, we're talking about non-proficient shooters. Pistols are the hardest to operate for sure in that regard. You have slide locks, sometimes you have external safeties, and then you have the ability to run the slide. There are tons of videos and forum threads out there about my mom, my sister, my grandma, whatever, my daughter can't run a slide on a handgun. Well, number one, if that's the case, please seek out training. Anyone who's not physically handicapped or impaired in some way can run a handgun proficiently if you learn some techniques, but that's not what this video is all about. But if that's the case, seriously seek that out and get that training that you guys need to win the fight. But pistols are definitely harder to operate, again, for untrained shooters. Lethality. What do I mean by that? I mean the ability to quickly end a fight. So if somebody is in your house trying to do you harm, trying to perpetrate violence upon your family, you want to stop that immediately, as fast as humanly possible, because every second that they're there hurting someone or potentially hurting someone is a second too long. So at that point, we want to employ these tools to end the fight as fast as possible. This one's kind of a toss-up. I put sort of the asterisk there, but I put number one is a shot. That's the next one, excuse me. Number one is going to be a shotgun. And the reason I say that is if we're talking double up buck, number one buck, number four buck, and that's 12 gauge, and 20 gauge number three buck. Those are the only ones I recommend, and those are the only ones that are going to fall into this lethality category. In terms of firing one round, one trigger pull, one squeeze, and hitting a high thoracic cavity in your chest, I would say you have the highest probability of ending that threat. Now, next on that list is going to be a rifle. Rifle calibers are simply way more lethal. Ask any ER doctor, ask any hunter how they compare to pistol calibers, and it's night and day. You have the actual capability with a rifle caliber to have a temporary stretch cavity, which is actually going to do damage, versus a pistol caliber, which if you watch a gel test, you'll see temporary stretch cavity, but in reality, it's much less likely to actually do damage with that temporary stretch cavity. And of course, the pistol and pistol caliber carbine are going to be tied there, simply because they're firing the same rounds, generally speaking. We'll get into this. Next point here is the over-penetration here. They are different though. I guess we'll touch on that here in just a second, but the best for over-penetration, what do I mean by over-penetration? Okay, so you shoot someone, a bad guy, doing bad things, and it goes through them and then into a innocent person, perhaps through a wall into an innocent person, or you miss the shot because in reality, a lot of shootings, people simply miss. It's the reality of life. You have to be prepared for it. If you miss a shot, it goes through drywall, 2 sheets, let's say you live in a condo, it goes through 2 sheets of drywall and into your neighbor's house and impacts somebody who you don't want it to impact. That's the risk you have every time you pull that trigger because you own every round that you send down range, right? So, all right, so in that case, and this is gonna be something that people get wrong constantly. This is one of the major reasons I'm doing this video. It's something I hear over and over again that is so wrong. It's dangerously wrong because people make decisions woefully ignorantly in this regard. So the least likely to over-penetrate is a rifle round. This is absolute fact. It's not a debate. It's absolutely true. And if you guys don't believe me, I have a couple of videos on that. You can also check out Reed Hendricks over at Valor Ridge, has a very good video practically demonstrating this in a house, shooting actual live rounds and documenting what happens. And then another great source is Box of Truth, I believe it is. And of course, there's also the New York Police Department. They release shooting statistics every year, and they include over-penetration. The majority of their shootings that have over-penetration, of course, are going to be pistols because most law enforcement officers, that's what they're carrying. However, they have a ton of data on AR-15s as well. because they're more and more common in law enforcement these days, and also old data on shotgun. They generally release their reports 2 years late. So it's 2019 right now. The 2017 report from the NYPD and FBI, I should also mention, they both released these reports, is probably out. I know the FBI's, as I've seen it. I'm not sure on the NYPD, but those are out there. You guys can reference those. But trust me with what I'm saying, this is absolutely true. So your rifle rounds are less likely to over-penetrate. And the reason for that, to explain it to somebody who may think I'm wrong, is that, let's say, for instance, we'll take this here. This is a 16-inch AR-15, and it's firing a 5.56 projectile. Depending on the ammunition you select, it's going to be going about 2,600 to 3,000 feet per second at room clearing distances. What's going to happen to that projectile is as soon as it hits a foreign media, whether that media is a person, a wall, etc., it's going to start to break apart because those velocities are simply so high. That can vary depending on the type of bullet. So if you have, let's say, a bonded bullet, it's going to be slower to break apart. If you have a OTM or open tip match bullet, it's going to be faster to break apart. If you have a varmint bullet, it's going to be extremely faster to break apart. If you're super worried, or rather I should say, about over penetration, varmint bullets are something I would take a look at. Now you lose some lethality with varmint bullets against two-legged attackers. So just keep that in mind. But that's the case there. Then with shotguns, we're going to be the next best. However, the reason I say it's still not quite as good with the little asterisk there is that it's ammo dependent. If you're selecting double-aught buck, particularly plated double-aught buck, you're effectively firing a pistol round in terms of over-penetration, okay? So some ways to reduce over-penetration with a shotgun are to use number 4 buckshot non-plated. I have a video on number 4 buckshot, Remington, non-plated 12 gauge on the channel that you guys can reference to kind of see what that's gonna do in different media. If you're worried about over-penetration, you're using a shotgun, but you still want lethality, number 4 buckshot, non-plated pellets is what I recommend. Some of you out there are going to argue for birdshot. Okay, birdshot can be lethal. However, it is not recommended by anybody who understands terminal ballistics that I respect. It's simply, it's not. It's a inferior penetrator, and again, it can be lethal. It absolutely can be. However, it is not a round I would recommend for self-defense in any way. So there's that. Again, if you want to reduce over-penetration but still have lethality, number 4 buck unplated. Next step down, number 1 buck unplated. Next step down, double-aught buck unplated. But then the double-aught buck, you're getting into pistol penetration. The reason is the projectile velocity as well as the projectile, what it's made of, the composure. It's basically the same. The reason here that we have the PCC being a little bit less likely to over-penetrate is because of velocity. So a lot of pistol caliber carbines, most of them are probably going to be 9mm, some are going to be 10mm, etc. If you're using a full-length barrel, a 16-inch barrel, anywhere down to like a 7-inch barrel, because I know a lot of guys are using braced pistols these days, which is fine, you're going to have more velocity than you would out of your standard 4 to 5-inch pistol barrel. So what that's going to do, again, just like the rifle, it's going to allow the bullet to break apart. Or if you're using hollow point, like bonded ammunition, let's say, it's going to allow the bullet to start to mushroom as soon as it impacts foreign media. And when it starts to mushroom, it has a wider surface that's pushing against the foreign media, whether that foreign media is human tissue or whether it's a couch or whether it's drywall. The larger surface there is going to slow it down faster and reduce penetration. So the faster your pistol caliber rounds are going, the less likely it is to over-penetrate. The same is true for number 1 and number 4 buck. It's the same reason. Those of course are generally going faster. It's load dependent, but generally they're going faster and will over-penetrate less. Okay, the ability to use accessories. So by accessories, I mean lights and optics, generally speaking. I guess we can talk about suppressors too, since I'm looking at them right here at my feet. All right, so the ability to use accessories has changed. Right now I'm filming this, it's 2019. It's dramatically different than it was in 2009. Nowadays, a lot of pistols have this capability. A lot of shotguns have this capability. So it's advancing. However, that's a relatively new thing, historically speaking. That said, in terms of accessories, there's no better option, in my opinion, than your AR-15. AKs are probably right behind it with some limited factors there. Very easy to mount optics. Optics work and they improve hit percentage dramatically. Take a look. Quote me on this. It was in the early 2000s, the Marine Corps released a report about the effectiveness of using ACOGs. That's what they used for their optics, the main, at the time anyway, versus iron sights. They did a study on actual combat engagements and hit percentages, and what they found was that optics dramatically, it was like 2 to 1, improved the hit percentage. So optics absolutely improve hit percentages under stress for sure. Yes, you can fire your AR-15 with iron sights up to 500 meters. I agree, you can do it. Skilled marksmen absolutely can do it, but under stress, under moving targets, when you're moving as well, optics are a huge help. So most carbines, again with the rifle here, allow that very easily. They also allow very easily the mounting of a light. I've gone over this before, but one thing you need to do as a law-abiding citizen defending your home, defending your family, is if you perceive a threat, you need to positively identify that threat. Most home invasions, I think like 83%, last I read, occur at night. So in the low light, you need to be able to identify that threat. If where you're positioned in your house and somebody kicks the door in doesn't allow you to flip a light switch, you need to have a light either right near your weapon or on your weapon. That's a debate for a whole nother day and a whole nother video. But it's incumbent upon you to make sure that it's not your drunk neighbor or your drunk cousin coming in, and it's actually somebody who is intending to do you harm, morally speaking. Some states that's not the case legally, but morally that is the case. So you need to be able to add a light to it. Again, kind of your AR-15 is the king in that one. You guys know I'm a big fan of AKs and other types of carbines, but in terms of accessorizing, it's very good rifle in that regard. Same thing with suppressors. However, again, just like I talked about earlier with optics and lights, you can get suppressed pistols these days very easily. Same with pistol caliber carbines, not so much with shotguns. And one of the things, the next up, we'll talk about pistol caliber carbines. Again, for this example here, we have the PCC. I know some of you guys like Kel-Tec, some of you guys like AR-9s, whatever. Again, the Scorpion's a great gun. This one here, very plain looking gun. A lot of probably banned states would even allow this because it doesn't look scary. But we have, of course, our 1X optic on there, and then our ability to mount the light there on the end to identify what we are looking at. Surefire, Streamlight tend to be go-tos if you guys don't know really what you're looking for. They're good ones. I recommend pretty much all of their offerings. Shotguns nowadays, of course, we have integrated light forends. I have the Surefire forend for my 590 SBS, but I didn't want to bring it out because that's a whole other discussion about NFA items. But so you guys can see here, Magpul forend. I think these things run like 40 bucks at most. They allow you to mount lights, etc. on there and very easily identify what you're looking at. Same thing here with the stock. If you guys want to run a sling, we'll get into that here in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. But they allow you to do that as well. And again, same thing here with pistols, the Glock 19X. It's got the light rail. If you guys want to get one with an optics mount, there's tons of options out there. Very good ones now, especially like this year. They've really advanced a lot. So they are out there. You guys can see the rank there. Shotgun is probably the least, and the reason I say that is most of your accessories for shotguns are going to be for, broadly speaking, 3 models. You're going to have your Remington 870s, your Mossberg 500, 590, and then probably your Benelli M4 if we're talking home defense type shotguns. Most of your accessories are going to be for those 3, probably with the Beretta 1301 coming in there a little bit behind it. It's gaining popularity though. So moving, the ability to move with said weapon. So first and foremost, in general, on a 2-way range, you don't want to be the one moving. You tend to put yourself at a disadvantage. That is a macro answer to something that has a lot of micro dynamics to it. However, the ability to move, again, for somebody who's not super well trained, is definitely highest with the pistol. So it's very easy to go, you know, compressed, move through a house. However, whatever training method you like, if you guys like tempo index, whatever, it's cool. There's not something sticking out beyond your body when having to move around structures. It also gives you the ability, if you guys have children, the ability to hold them however you want to and keep the muzzle clear and yet still be able to employ and drive it out very quickly and engage targets should they appear quickly. So PCC, again, we're going to go right behind that. The reason I say that is, although this one here has a 16-inch barrel, it's going to be the same as a carbine. A lot of guys are using braced pistols. If that's the case, again, you can kind of chop this one off right here, and that's what you're moving around with. It's just a little bit shorter. Shorter in general is easier. It's a fact of life. Now, training can mitigate those differences. However, it still will be a factor regardless of your skill set. Rifles, again, we're going to assume 16 inches here. I have a suppressor on mine. Let's pretend you don't. It won't be, it'll cut that off right there. Again, it's not super difficult to maneuver with, but for somebody who's not trained walking around like this, you're putting yourself in a bad situation should you have to do so. Now, one thing that is an advantage to all of these long guns over the pistols for maneuverability is if you choose to employ a sling. If you choose to employ a sling, you can strap that thing down to yourself, go two hands should you need to do so. That's important for any number of scenarios. If you're have engaged the bad guy and they're not a threat anymore, but you still want to maintain positive control of your weapon, use your cell phone, hold your wife down who's freaking out in the corner and make sure she's not just going ballistic. Those things happen, right? It's real life. Your kid's crying. You want to make sure they don't run over to the bad guy because he's whimpering on the ground with 9 holes and buckshot in his chest. Any of those numbers of scenarios that may happen, it does give you that capability. So that's something you have to weigh as well. But also, if you're going to do that, another advantage of a sling for those 3 systems outside of a pistol, because I'm assuming you're not going to run a lanyard in your tighty whities in the middle of the night. The thing about that is it secures the weapon to yourself, which is an advantage. It's hard for the bad guy to take it away from you. That's a disadvantage for a pistol, of course. The other disadvantage of it is if you're not trained with a sling, it's something that's just going to hang and you're not going to put it on and it's going to catch on things. It can catch on things, rather, I should say. So again, pros and cons, things to weigh, things to think about for these types of scenarios. So I have no idea how long this video has been. The sun's about to set, so probably a long time. All right, so again, the things to talk about, these are kind of just the broad strokes. Some of these things will be huge for you, right? So the ease of hits, if somebody is not proficient with a gun, it becomes way more important than some of the other factors. Like if somebody's super proficient with a pistol, like you are a top IDPA champion, then the ease of hits kind of is minimized, right? And there's less weights on it because you probably will be able to get hit pretty effectively at the 10 to 30 foot distances that most home defense engagements are going to happen at. And 30 feet is a lot for a home defense shot, so just keep that in mind as well. Look around on that note, look around your house. Take a look at what the longest shot you could have. So in my house, it's about 50 feet. And that would be an extreme scenario. So one end to the other in terms of open airways. So think that through and kind of see what would be the best case for you. I know some of you guys live in like lofts and stuff like that. I used to when I was in college. I lived in a loft. It was like 400 square feet. So it'd be a little different scenario, okay? Yeah, you guys can see them all weighed out here. And again, this is my scoring system. If you guys disagree with it, that's totally cool. Feel free to disagree. Post down below in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts. If one of these things is off in terms of the way I weighed it or valued it, let me know. Again, you guys can see it's not always 1 through 4 because certain things are just tied because that's reality. In my opinion, this is my reality. My perception is my reality. But as you can see with the carbine here, we got 12. With the PCC, got 17, pistol 20, shotgun 22. Again, if you grew up shooting 870s all day long, it can be weighed differently, right? So these are things to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind, while I still have some coffee left in my cup, is on the rifles. I wanted to address that here real quick. I talked about AR-15 ammo here real quick, earlier rather I should say, with varmint ammo versus OTM versus like a full metal jacket or bonded. The same is going to be true for as you decrease velocity, right? So nowadays a lot of guys are going towards 300 Blackout, suppressed, or maybe 7.62 by 3.9, so you're using AK, something like that. Those rounds, what they're going to do, of course, is you have a bigger caliber and a similar type case. So it's a broad stroke I'm painting with there. But what's going to happen is you're going to have less velocity. So instead of having 26 to 3,000 feet per second, you're going to have 22 to 26 feet per second. The projectiles there, generally speaking, because of the velocity envelope that we're talking about there, are going to be less likely to not over penetrate. So they're more likely to over penetrate. However, that can absolutely be mitigated with bullet selection. So if you are going to go with a 300 Blackout and your concern is over penetration, keep that in mind. Same thing with 7.62 by 39. 7.62 by 39, a couple good ones, of course, is the Hornady SST. Some folks say the M67, that's debatable for the comment section. The Winchester PDX-1's a good round, 7.62 by 39. 300 Blackout, the Barnes, of course, is awesome. There's also, the Gorilla makes a 110 grain load that I can't think of off the top of my head, but it's actually what I use in my 300 Blackout home defense gun, and that's assuming supersonic. So a lot of guys are using 300 Blackout subsonic. If that's the case, again, just make sure you're aware of your over penetration possibility. It's absolutely, I'm not saying not to do it. Everybody's situation is different. If you guys look around our neighborhood here, you'll see that most houses are about 100 to 300 feet apart. It's very different where I live here versus somebody who lives in Manhattan versus somebody who lives in Manhattan, Kansas, and is out on a farm where all the houses are 800 yards or more apart, right? So everybody's situation is different. You have to weigh them accordingly, okay? Again, guys, I'm gonna stop my rant there because I could probably go on for hours on this subject on each one of these, but I wanted to give a quick overview that you guys can reference for people that are asking you this stuff. I know a lot of people that watch this channel and subscribe to this channel are like the gun expert in your community and your circle of friends. If that's the case and somebody's asking you, what should I get? Hopefully this video will serve as a good reference guide for them that you can point them towards, and hopefully it'll be the subject of internet forum threads for years to come. That's about it, guys. Again, if you have any questions, post them down below in the comment section. You can also post those over at my Facebook page. As always, that is the best place to get in touch with me if you actually need answers, because I see the messages over there versus Facebook, or rather versus YouTube Full 30 and anywhere else I post videos. And if you guys aren't subscribed and you like this type of content and you want to see actual product testing and the details behind everything I just said, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so you can see all those videos. And lastly, and probably most importantly, thank you very much for watching. If you are subscribed, thank you for subscribing. If you're not subscribed, thank you for subscribing in the future, because you're going to. And I hope to see all of you guys in the next video.